we've got the full gang back together for the first time in a long time. Andy and Megan, good to see
Well,
you.
hey, very good to see you.
Hello,
It's
everyone.
the overdue catch up, or I think is Kevin Bridges' new tour, but it's very much aligned with our catch up, and we've no guests, so we're keeping it very inclusive today.
That sounded like you're almost about to launch a sponsor, but alas,
that.
we're
don't
still
know if-
looking for a sponsor.
I'm not sure Big Kev IM wants into the AI podcast game, but you never know.
You never know. You never know.
Inbox is always open.
100%. You know me, very receptive to inbound inquiries. How is things? What's been happening in the start of 2026?
Good. Well, incredibly, it's February. January was just felt like the longest month and the shortest month, and everything in between. So much going on.
Tough.
I'm just glad.
This time of year.
Yeah, I'm just glad the world of AI slowed down. There's not been much going on.
Really had the brakes on.
Had a really
Nothing
chill
new.
January. No, it's been mental.
Is that sarcasm coming through in audio?
That is really. I'm trying to drip the sarcasm out. It's been mental. We've been on the rocket ship, but it's been exciting. It's been good. It's a very good start to 2026.
Gives us plenty to talk about, which is exciting.
Sure
I've got some exciting news. I was filling Megan in there, Andy, before you came on, but I think you might know, I'm not sure. But we're expecting our first baby, a baby girl.
You told me. You did tell me it was a girl.
Yeah.
Exciting
Congrats.
news.
Well, I only found that out on Friday. I thought I'd told you that
exciting.
Steph was pregnant. So no, very exciting. So some nice positive news to bring to the podcast. So all change, and well, I'm sure there's a lot of change to come in my household. But anyway, that's not what we're here to discuss. There's other people that talk about being pregnant for a podcast. So ours is very much in the guy scene. So today we thought you can. Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm in the company of two well-established parents that can give me some tips. But no, we're going to focus our conversation today on the news that Lanarkshire are launching the new AI hub, and also chatting about Claudebot or Moltbot as our open Claude that is known as.
Let's start off close to home with the Lanarkshire investment.
Yeah.
So
Perfect.
we've, just to get across the story, we've got an announcement that there will be an over £8 billion investment in North Lanarkshire. Gutted because I'm from South Lanarkshire.
That's my neck of the woods. That's
not better at all. But it's going to North Lanarkshire.
We should pan out a bit. We should pan.
Scotland has received investment of a sizable chunk for an AI hub, and it's all bells and whistles. It's right from the data centre, the energy sourcing, all the way through to kind of community investment in data literacy, AI professionals, training. It just is a bit of everything. It sounds very exciting, pretty comprehensive.
There's something like 800 AI jobs they expect will be created. Nearly 3,500 construction jobs. It's amazing. It's like so massive. And the companies involved, DataWeave, CoreWeave, Data Vita, etc. This is brilliant. It's like such good news. I was sharing this around in work, right? And no one can believe me that this is happening. You know, no one can believe how kind of big the investment is, and the fact it's happening in sort of this part of Scotland. So I think it's absolutely excellent, and it's something that I know we've all been passionate about, you know, about the Scottish ecosystem for years. So it's just fantastic to see. I am super excited, and I was really shocked at like a name like CoreWeave being on that. CoreWeave are a really big name in the space, so it's fantastic.
So, in terms of the kind of couple of questions that I had, so obviously it's setting up infrastructure to power AI capacity. Is that purely data centres? Is that what we're looking at here? Or I know it's more than that when we talk about contributing to ecosystems, but purely in what its purpose is that what it's set up to do?
From what I read, and it's quite hard to dive into some of the specifics on the 8 billion like headline figure, but at least 1.5 billion of that is data center focused. So it's about the infrastructure, the kind of core stuff, the build, the construction. As Andy said, there's a huge amount of people involved in building a physical building and site. So I expect that is a very large part of what we're talking about. But the UK government press releases are really keen to emphasise that they're rounding it with additional investment up through the tech stack chain. So its outcome is not just to provide data center and infrastructure, is to try and build out the whole AI skill set right up to top level delivery of AI systems involving data scientists, AI specialists at that level. I think I'm a little bit unclear about what that top level would look like in practice, because I mean, generally, use cases get delivered through clear investment from a particular company or sector that needs to solve a problem, doing it from a data center up, kind of ground up mechanism. I'm not sure what that looks like in practice. Unclear.
Yeah, I think it'd be a real opportunity, and I've not seen anything on this. But I'm hoping this is the play. It'd be a real opportunity to start really considering the UK's sovereign AI position. So this is where, most of the AI powerhouses are obviously American, as is true of cloud hyperscalers, and that has what you call concentration risk. So the fact is that as may or may not be happening now, if you have some temperamental political climate and you enter into a trade war with the supplier of all this core infrastructure, they can just turn off the taps, right? So tomorrow, Britain, UK, Europe, etc., could just be cut off from some of the most important software and AI infrastructure we've got. So a lot of countries are now clamoring to create their own sovereign AIs, so trying to create LLMs, etc., on the scale of OpenAI and Anthropic, etc., for their.
You've made it sound nice and exciting, almost akin to like a space race, but for AI. But it's more than that, right? Because it's about a fundamental piece of sovereign infrastructure that we cannot then develop on top of if we don't have access. Is that what you're saying? Like we could be cut off from a wide range of different ecosystems if we don't progress.
So this has been a known risk in software for years anyway, but when the world was more stable, the chances that the world would be cut off from the biggest cloud providers was a remote possibility for the vast majority of the connected global economy. Now it's not that case, obviously. As we've seen, right, things are a lot more unstable. So this risk is just really, really kind of came to the fore across the full software stack. But then with AI, it's became almost more acute because, well, this is my view anyway. And please write into the show if you have another opinion. But it's kind of more acute because you're getting to a point where there's some technologies, these best-in-class AI models, there becomes a point where you almost can't catch up. Open source is generally catching up with the biggest providers, but there might become a point where they don't and they just run away with it. And that's quite dangerous for a lot of countries who don't have their own infrastructure because they're going to be so dependent on the only providers. It's a similar concentration risk to what we have with semiconductors, actually. Taiwan and other places are the main manufacturing centers for semiconductors across the world. And that's a huge risk to supply chains. So it's the same idea, but played out in a kind of new way. So I'm hoping it's this small inroads to us having like a UK sovereign AI where we have far more of that infrastructure, which we need in other parts of the stack, cloud, etc. as well. But
got a good book recommendation if you're interested in that semiconductor piece. Chip War.
Oh yeah,
really, really good. All about the kind of early what it took to develop the technology in the first place, and then the race to own it and control it over time. To what extent, though, are we already too late? Like, is there a realistic future prospect where UK-based companies start moving away from the big US-based tech providers? What has to be true for that to happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say right now, I don't think it's too late, but I think we are. It could happen. I get really nervous about this when you're lying awake at night. How does the guy who drives the snowplow get to his work in the morning? That sort of thing. It's a very important question, I think, Megan, because my view is like because you've got companies like Meta open sourcing really powerful models like the Llama suite, or now even OpenAI with the OpenGPT models, right? A GPT OSS. You're still getting access to that world in an open source world way, and then you can build on that. But there could come a point where they stop open sourcing that and they just try and go for full monopolization.
Even the open sourcing, though, it's quite clearly on their terms.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Quite clearly not like an even playing field, even if they open up bits and pieces.
Exactly. So it's going to require astronomical investment. You said space race. I think it is a space race, and I don't think we're investing like it's a space race because you are talking about a crazy amount of investment. Like you were just talking about, it's infrastructure, it's community, it's skills, it's people applying it in industry. It's all of these things have to happen on a really huge scale. So are we too late? I don't know. It's a good question.
But why would UK-based businesses, what would be the driver for them to move away from a major LLM provider?
I think some of the risks would have to become more tangible. So at the moment, while we are obviously nervous about the ownership provenance of all of these systems and platforms, I don't think it's yet resulted in material risk to business in reality.
And
if that started to be true, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, would that be like data that's about those specific businesses that's held by these cloud providers becoming accessible to other businesses, other countries, blah, blah, blah? Or is it more than
I
that?
don't think that's the main risk, and that the majority of these companies have had to build very secure location-centered offers. Like in the UK, we tend to use Irish data centers for that reason, so that we're not sharing across outside of kind of EU data zones. But the things I mean are more like if there were more and more routine outages, the latency of services was affected on a routine basis. Even things like if we suddenly started being last on the list of people to whom a model was available. So we have situations within my team where we're trying to do something, it requires a particular type of GPU, a particular piece of infrastructure, and it, the message back is sometimes that it's not available in your area yet. If that became consistently the case, that UK companies and businesses weren't able to access the things that kept them level on a playing field with their kind of US competitors, I think that kind of materialization of that risk would then have companies start to think, well, it's not fitting our needs the way it once used to, or it's not prioritizing our needs the way it ought to. Now we would think seriously about an alternative. But that's quite a lot of if thens stacked on top of each other.
But to your point, it only grows with time as AI becomes more of a core enabler rather than a nice to have. So as AI permeates the economy and all of our technology, all of our infrastructure, you're talking about the point where a lot of core infrastructure might require AI to function. We might have AI in our data grid, we might have AI in our telecommunications network, etc. And to that point, it becomes really dangerous.
That doesn't sound that unbelievable, given now if you lose internet access, you lose the ability to use about 90% of the apps and services that you've signed up to. It will become, if it is embedded across the full chain of services and products at that level, then it just becomes core, necessary, always on.
Exactly. A good relevant story to this that's just landed as well was, I don't know if anyone saw this, but I think it's the Swiss government have banned Palantir as a exception for the defense contracts and stuff. So Palantir is a kind of big American company. A lot of people have very strong views about them, but they work mainly in defense and in lots of other related areas. But the Swiss government have basically said no after reviewing this. There's no guarantee that our data sovereignty is protected. So to your point, Chris, data could be shared with actors in America, and that relationship is potentially not what it once was. But also a big part they listed was that risk, the fact that if they became reliant on an American company and if relations soured at some point, that could fundamentally impact their military infrastructure, and that's not a risk they're willing to take. So they're trying to look at options closer to home. So it's things like that. So I'm almost imagining it's to Megan's point. It might not be necessarily the risk is at the tipping point yet, where you say, buy UK, like you buy your UK eggs, you buy your UK LLMs, but it maybe gets to the point where the UK need to have an option, like a backup. It's like having a backup generator. You don't want to run the backup generator. You'd rather have the nice kind of fresh power from the grid. But if the lights go out, you need it. So it's that kind of thinking at least has to happen.
It's a good way of diving into the sustainability angle, because if it is purely a backup and if it is a sort of dual running alongside the options that most businesses and services are relying on, is it worth the energy it's going to take to invest and get all that literal building and infrastructure and stuff in place just in case?
You might double down on more efficient. So it might be that you can't compete on the biggest LLMs, etc., or something. Maybe there's a niche you focus on where you say we're going to focus on more bespoke, smaller models, and that's a bit more cost effective. It's a really great question, but it comes back to the thing we've discussed before about, is all of this worth it anyway from an environmental point of view?
And now we've gone existential.
And we've gone existential. I said pan out earlier. We've gone too far.
You've got too far back in, narrow.
Back south and north Lanarkshire, yes.
So when you were talking to the race to space, what I was wondering was, all of the news at the moment that Elon Musk is talking about, they're going to be building data centers in space within the next 5 years. Is that what would be the benefits to that, and to how would that compare to obviously Scotland and Lanarkshire setting up their own AI infrastructure and data centers here?
I don't even know how to engage with that. Crack on, Elon.
Crack on, Elon.
What do you say?
It's interesting, right? Because environmentally, putting lots of data center equipment into space is very environmentally costly. I imagine in the long run, it would actually be quite environmentally beneficial, because you're not consuming all this water that we need for drinking and other things. You're not releasing a lot of heat into our atmosphere. You're not burning fuel here that's releasing greenhouse gases, unless it becomes fully renewable or nuclear anyway. So I don't say this often about Elon, but I can kind of get the argument. But it is bonkers. Like, I don't think in the next few years that's going to happen. Not at the scale that would make an impact, right? It's going to be little tiny things.
Yeah.
Do you know Microsoft and others already run data centers under the sea? Do you know this?
I think I've heard about this.
So it's quite amazing to see it. So there's these huge submersible containers, and they plonk. So other cloud providers do it as well, but they just plonk all these servers in. So they run the data center thousands of feet under the sea, and it's because then they don't invest in cooling piping.
See, that panics me, given my background in environmental fluid mechanics. In fact, very timely.
What a background for this topic.
I knew this would come in handy one day.
Here.
Unfortunately, I don't share the same background.
Actually, in a couple of weeks, there's a huge ocean sciences meeting in Glasgow. I think it starts the 24th at the SEC. But my academic world is coming to join me on location in Glasgow, which is very nice. The idea that you don't have to mitigate for heating just because it's under the ocean is scary to me, because the entire kind of environmental system upon which we rely is all focused on finely tuned balances of heat exchange in the ocean. And I don't really want anyone to be playing with that without being very, very mindful. Maybe I prefer the moon.
What, when like tsunami territory? Have they get that wrong?
Oh, is that breaking down all the current?
Yeah. Ice Age.
The day after tomorrow, right?
Basically, yeah.
Basically.
We went from
totally
entirely optimistic to
I've just totally dismissed all of environmental fluid mechanics and stuff. I just sort of, the day after tomorrow, right? But no, I agree, Megan. It's definitely not a solution, but stick them in space. Maybe it's a solution. But again, getting all this stuff up to space is so environmentally costly.
And you still need coolants, and there's no water up there.
No, but you just use the vacuum of space as your coolant. You just emit the heat into there, right?
But in terms of
it's really cold. It's 4 degrees Kelvin in space.
Is it the way the world's now consuming LLMs that these data centres and the amount of compute power required to run them at the scale that the usage necessary is why these are all having to be developed, and obviously all the environmental issues that come from that? Is that purely why these are all they're popping up everywhere?
You mean the space thing or the localised ones?
The data centre, like the data centres, is that all they became necessary in order for the models to run the way that they are?
I think it's important not to overemphasize AI's impact on that at the moment. Like, data-hungry applications exist everywhere and are still increasing at a wild rate across all different industries and spaces. So I think it's definitely adding, and it is growing in terms of the proportion that is LLM focused or Gen AI focused, but the whole world's data needs are growing.
Yep.
That is kind of powering the demand as much as AI specifically.
Perfect. And then just closing off the Lanarkshire AI Hub, so we're optimistic, we think it's a good thing, but there's definitely certain aspects that we're not sure on.
I think the big thing about it that sort of Megan touched on as well is it is meant to be a net zero development. It is meant to be the sort of, it is, and it's very good at that kind of responsible and green AI. To your point, Chris, does this help the environmental problem? If you have more localized deployments of data center infrastructure and they have a kind of requirement, a push to be net zero and to be sustainable, that is a positive, I think, personally. Because
I agree.
Some of the players currently aren't. Yeah.
The control that we gain by having it within the UK and within Scotland, it means that we can keep a closer eye on its energy credentials, and we can put like much more rigorous governance around that. Agree.
And that was a big reason why Data Vita were chosen as the partner, wasn't it? Because of their green infrastructure. All right, we're moving on. So we're chatting about Claudebot. Andy, do you want to bring us into this topic?
Yeah. So this is an absolute cracker. I think I saw this coming. I think we all saw this coming. So it's a bit of a convoluted story, so I'm going to try and condense it down a little bit, and we'll follow it. And I haven't researched this to the depth that I would have wanted to. So again, anyone who writes into the show, please be gentle on me. But basically, there was a project initially created called, I think it was called Maltbot first, and then it was called Claudebot, and now it's called OpenClaw. And basically, it was a developer in Austria, I think, and he created a little agent that you could run locally on your computer. And what it could do is connect to your WhatsApp, your operating system, your Outlook, your emails, everything And he said, like, look, this runs all the time and it's your little AI personal assistant. You should have red flags already. Run all the time, connect to all those things. People loved it because they were like, oh, I can run it locally on my device. I don't sign up to a cloud provider. I don't have API keys and stuff. I'm running something. So people, I think, had this view that it gave them lots of control. And some of the stats I got were crazy. So the repo, the project for this on GitHub had like 145,000 stars, 20,000 forks, 350,000 downloads from NPM, so that's the package manager that's used for this because it's written in JavaScript, TypeScript. 300,000 to 400,000 users estimated. Insane. So people just downloaded this agent and started running it, and then the story. Sorry, Megan, you were going to come in, but the story kind of gets more and more interesting from there. But you can see where it's going, right?
Yeah, I am just going to write in with a complaint that you've not quite got the local bit. It runs on Anthropic's Claude,
right?
So it's like a wrapper around kind of third parties LLM.
No, you're right. You put an like API key to your LLM. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the way I've described it is it's like a access path to your system and to your applications for Anthropic's Claude, which just sounds like a information security nightmare in a sentence.
Yes.
Imagine, it doesn't take too many leaps of faith to imagine that the original author could have been a bad actor and could have been trying to test out some large-scale kind of weakness. And what would have now happened on those many thousands of machines on which it's just been thrown.
Yeah.
Scary.
There was known attacks like this before. Yeah, sorry, Chris. Yeah.
Tell me about the positives of it before getting into this, like in terms of...
To be honest, I don't see any. I think this is nuts, right, honestly.
So
I think
this is...
Was it novel? Was it doing something that it hadn't done before in terms of...
It was definitely interesting in the sense that people have spoken a lot about, AI and agents will help you manage your life, etc. But I think a definite frustration with people has been that you're logging into a system to run a set of agents, then you're logging into another system to run a set of agents. So there is kind of an interesting angle here about just saying, give it control to all of these different apps. And it's similar to what OpenAI were. Yeah.
I think the positives, if I'm to search really harder at the user level, they're the local pain points of, I want my large language model of choice to be able to go and do things and actively start saving me time. Because what people are currently finding is that they'll use something like Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT and it saves them a proportion of time, but they're still having to like copy and paste a lot. They're still having to, like, as Andy said, log in and out of multiple systems to get like the final outcome realized. And this was like the final kind of jigsaw piece that let them take what all the good stuff they were seeing with their use of like browser-based large language models and bring it directly to their system. And again, the user focus, it's primarily been talked about as a way to like organize your calendar or do some quite individually focused admin tasks. It hasn't yet been talked about at the system level. And to be clear, it would be absolute lunacy for a company to propose that this be a thing that they integrate on a system basis. So I think the benefits are about an individual. It's about your kind of personal management of either your working like calendar and workflows or your personal kind of diary and flight booking and all that kind of stuff. And for me, my time isn't massively taken up by those tasks. So I don't personally see that it's going to provide me a massive upside, and it's got a huge security potential downside. So yeah, I can see some positives. They're not for me.
Yeah, it's the promise. It's the promise of that truly autonomous personal assistant that people were sort of promised when ChatGPT and stuff came along. They talking about the security things, right? I'm just going to list some of them to give everybody nightmares, and then I'll talk about another thing which is called Maltbook, which is different. But and that also had a very interesting security nightmare recently. But basically, there was all these security issues found. So there's things like you were mentioning, Megan. Basically, the core agent runs locally, but it's using your LLM provided elsewhere. Also, it's got all these credentials and connective tissue into all of these different systems. So basically, it's storing locally in kind of very unprotected ways the API keys, all of the secrets, the tokens being used to interact with all these systems. Apparently, some of them were just stored in clear text in a local file called Claudebot, right? You're talking about if Megan leaves her computer open and I just jump into the terminal, I see all our passwords in this file, and I know where to go to find this file because it's the same one for everyone's open Claudebot, whatever we're calling it now. There was also kind of some insecure code patterns apparently detected from looking at it. So different things were used in the repo that are a bit kind of out of date or unsafe. And there's just huge questions about the supply chain. So just all of the skills that are coming online and being plugged into it, it's just not safe. It's just a prime example, I think, of how building something like this now is easy. Building something like this safely is hard. And this is always true, right? Yeah.
Even on top of that, sharing it is easy. Building it and then putting it in the hands of thousands and thousands of users and then losing control of how it works because they can go, as we've said, we can fork it on GitHub, we can add to it, we can amend it, we can insert all sorts of different security anti-patterns if we want to, if we're not skilled in spotting what those are. It is a risk that scales and scales and scales because AI makes it very easy to do that.
Yes. And because you're running it yourself locally and you're doing all the things you mentioned, Megan, the typical developer, someone new into this world, they're not going to be running traditional scanners over this. They're not going to be running the stuff they should be if they were going to give this access to lots of different systems, etc., to check for security vulnerabilities that are even the standard ones, never mind new AI ones. There was then just building on that. So this was one part of the story. Another thing that I don't know why it shared the same name, but you had Maltbot, which was OpenClaw's name at one point. You then had Maltbook, which was a Reddit-style social network created.
I've heard about this.
Yes, created exclusively for agents. So this came in the part of the same wave recently, right? You had these Maltbot things. Again, they started being called OpenClaw, but it's all under this OpenClaw framework. So it's all the same underlying sort of framework. So this guy, I think it was this guy Matt Schlick, who's the CEO of Octane AI, maybe. But he launched this. He launched this and he says it's only agents allowed. Humans can watch, but they can't interact. And everybody thought, what a brilliant experiment. This is amazing. So everyone's building these agents. They're either running these agents, they're OpenClaw ones, or they're building new agents, and they're putting them onto this. They're making them interact with this social network Maltbook. And again, they claimed they had 1.5 million registered agents within a few days. So millions of agents they're running around that hundreds of thousands of people have built. And again, it's easy to build something but not build it safely. Last week, I think it was, there was the Wiz team, who are a security company, or Wiz security researchers. They basically went and very easily hacked the main database powering this social media network. So it was a Supabase. So Supabase is a provider of like platform as a database as a service, basically. You go in, you spin up Postgres and stuff. You do it all online serverless. Basically in it, there was like all of the agents' API keys.
Great.
There was email addresses.
I knew that's where we were going.
There was email addresses for everybody. There was private messages. There was passwords. There was it was just absolute free-for-all, all of it in clear text. And they were like, we can just see so much about everybody because of this one database that was left pretty exposed that was backing this. So even though people thought, oh, it's agents playing around and having fun, there was so much human, important data related to the humans behind those agents that it's just such a massive leak. And it just shows how dangerous all this can be, right? So it looked like a fun experiment, but it was so leaky. Yeah.
It's interesting to think about what good security practice would even look like for agents. What's the agent equivalent of a CAPTCHA? When you're trying to log in and someone wants to prove that you're a human. How do you do the opposite? How do you prove that you're a machine?
No, well, we're thinking a lot about this, doing a lot of work on this. So the key thing is agents are just the same as traditional microservices at the end of the day. The thing that's different is they dynamically orchestrate their tasks, as and they call different tools and stuff. And it's sometimes hard to define that sort of boundary. And then you're going to get complicated chains of interactions of agents. But there's concepts already around this. There's on behalf of flows and other authorization authentication flows that exist in these sort of systems when you chain microservices together. So a lot of the existing infrastructure is there. The problem now is it's so easy to hack something together and so easy to stick AI on it and sell it out there in the world. So apparently this Maltbook thing was entirely vibe coded.
I mean, you can tell.
And look what happened, right?
2 sentences into the description, you could tell.
Exactly, right. So it's basic things in the databases you're using, you can have field level encryption, row level security. You can do all of these things to protect the data in the database. That's kind of just basic DBA hygiene. That wasn't done. There's just so many stuff around, where should you be storing API keys? You should be storing them in a vault, a secrets manager. That wasn't done. Just stored in plain text in the database. It's mental, but it just shows you again, it's easy there are ways to do things right. And
there is a lot of
people aren't doing it.
Internal validation as you walk through this in terms of sitting in a large organization, trying to make headway into developing with AI and doing so in a measured, governed approach, meets with a lot of frustration and people asking why you're not going faster, why you're not scaling quicker, and why are we not able to do all these different things with these tools that are now flooding the market. And as you walk through examples like this, it's just here's why. Here's what can go wrong if you don't do it with the checks and balances, if you don't have the professionals sitting around it who have the balance view of what best practice needs to be implemented to keep things secure. It is very validating for a thorough business-wide approach to this kind of stuff. So I will take that away as my positive from this news story.
No, 100%. Like that's exactly it, Megan. And it's kind of it is always a balance, right? Some organizations and domains are obviously a lot slower than others for innovation, but move fast and break things can have really bad consequences. So move fast and break things, which is always kind of touted as the Silicon Valley way of doing things, is not necessarily the best approach, because sometimes the things you break are exposing the access to all your most intimate details or your bank accounts or something.
And I mean, at the most fundamental level of the metaphor, breaking things sometimes hurts and is sometimes irreparable.
Spot on.
Just before we kind of finish up, obviously we've not got together for maybe 3-4 months. Has there been changes to both your kind of roles where LLMs are playing a bigger part in the work that you're doing, or is there more, as you say, the top level asking you to do things quicker and move at faster pace with more adoption? Are you seeing changes? Especially
I don't know if it's changed. I think the last time we spoke about it, I was still at the stage where if I take the overall view of kind of data science or where machine learning is relevant within a BBC context, still around about a 20%, 15 to 20% is LLM focused in terms of what it's delivering. I'd say that is increasing. And what I am seeing is that use cases or spaces we would have liked to move into 5-10 years ago, we can now go after. So I'm seeing new projects that are now viable that wouldn't have been prior to the kind of scale of large language model that we now have access to. The other space that I think is really kind of dynamically and quickly changing is evaluation, particularly kind of LLM as judge type evaluation techniques. They're sort of allowing where you would previously go through quite rigorous testing with users to validate an approach, combined with offline scoring and metrics, and those two maybe don't always map to one another very well. We now have a kind of middle route of LLM as judge that can go in at scale, evaluate and give you kind of quant metrics over a kind of system, and I think that's really changed a lot of the way we work.
Explain LLM as a judge to me. Is that where an LLM evaluates another LLM? Is that how that works?
Doesn't have to be another LLM. So LLM as judge is just an LLM doing the job as an evaluator. So it could be a traditional AI system, or it could even be a logic-based system, but you're using an LLM to tell you whether or not the output is either meeting some kind of accuracy criteria or it has the right kind of semantic meaning of what you expected the output to look like. It sort of allows you to do what human evaluation would have done, which is giving you like qualitative, detailed feedback on a particular output from any system. And it scales because it's an LLM.
Scales, and it doesn't. It does scale because you're right. You can get it to do feedback in the way a human would do. It doesn't scale in a sense because, my God, it is expensive.
It can be pricey. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But not exactly. It's super interesting. But for my role, it's a super interesting. I think everything Megan said sort of chimes. For me, I've got a lot of deja vu in a kind of good way. I feel like that way when data science, I've said this before, but the way that when data science kicked off and then a few years in, it was like, oh, we need to operationalize this at scale. Same thing's happening with AI. And it's a really fun time to be working in this space. I'm loving the kind of challenges, but it's all the stuff we're talking about. It's like, how do you do that LLM as a judge at scale without burning the bank? How do you monitor these things? Because it's so much more difficult than traditional ML, especially supervised learning, right? Gone are the glory days, maybe you and I, right? You remember this, right? There was an answer. There was a prediction and an answer.
You could progress a project with a team of 3. What a world.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think me being in that kind of really software development space now, I think it's weird that I'm actually in my role currently, I'm coding a lot more than I have traditionally, but it's just because I'm kind of leaning into more stuff. But a lot of people around me are using AI assistants more to write their codes, and I'm having to evaluate it, and it's kind of interesting. It's interesting.
That's fun. I'm not using AI for coding because I'm not coding nearly at all, but I am using AI a lot more in my day-to-day. But I feel like over the last maybe 6 months, I've really refined the tasks I want it to do and the things that I find it valuable.
Just not
to ask it. The majority of what I use it for is if I am about to pulls together material for sharing context or for talking kind of a team through a new space, and I've got a lot of different documents that are my source, I'll get it to do a first pass summary of that material. What I am never finding is that output is good enough to just carry on unedited. I'm always going back and very, very heavily editing. Either I'm adding more context in and I'm telling it about things it clearly doesn't know about so that it can add those in, or I'm entirely scrapping the structure that it's given me and rewriting. But it's just that kind of two-way conversational feedback mechanism of what is the thing I'm trying to achieve with this conversation or this presentation or so on. It gives me a sort of first draft, and then I refine and get to a point where I've got a kind of set of material. And I feel like I can get through the preparation phase of any of those kinds of tasks a lot quicker than I used to be able to.
And I take it that would be a approved LLM, like a co-pilot that you've got a license for as a company you would use for
so
that.
I would be strictly using an enterprise license, usually browser-based tool, although not always. It would be something where the data sharing is absolutely not happening. So everything I'm putting in that has company context or sensitive data, it's absolutely guaranteed not to be shared onward to the third-party model provider.
Last question, just on that topic. If I'm an employee of a business and I don't have, say I'm an SME, even my enterprise, and I'm using a personal, like my ChatGPT license to put company documents in and ask it to summarise, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, what's all the risks at that level? Because I would imagine that's been done at a pretty high scale at the moment.
Oh, man.
Personally, if it's found out that you're doing that, you will be subject to a disciplinary process and you may lose your job. In terms of the organisational risk, everything we've been talking about through the podcast, I mean, data leakage, making agents or kind of fine-tuned models available to third parties. You can give away everything from company strategy through to personal information. So the risks are significant.
You need to lock it down, Chris. You need to lock it down. Share at your own risk. If you're happy with Sam Altman knowing everything about you, to be fair, the amount I use certain AI assistants to talk through everything in my life, from planning meals to going to the gym to whatever anxiety is going through your head of the day, they probably know everything about me anyway. But yeah, company stuff.
I very rarely use it in my personal life, which is fun.
Really?
Anyway, we have lost Chris, which is fun. So I guess it's up to you and I to wrap up the episode.
We're going to wrap up. So thanks everybody for tuning in.
Process.
And we'll be back soon. Cheers all.
Thank you. Lovely to see you. Bye-bye.